I think when we talk about her agency,
Mm-hmm.
my own personal agency,
Yes, ma'am.
it's about life strategy. And sometimes I think that we're busy reacting to what's happening around us.
Say that.
Things that we cannot control. We cannot control the political environment around us outside of our votes, right?
Welcome to Her Agency, the podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Rand. This is a space curated for Black women in advertising who are bold enough to pick up the pen, write the brief, take up space, and own their agency. Hey, this is Brandy Rand, host of Her Agency podcast. Welcome to another episode where we're talking all about what it looks like to be a people and culture evangelist. I'm here with HR and DE&I powerhouse, Miss Aisha. Welcome to Her Agency.
Hey, Brandy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So let's get into it. So I ask everyone who comes through this question because we're all about owning our agency.
Yeah.
What is one way in your career that you're super proud of when you owned your agency?
Ooh, I would have to say it's actually happening right now.
Okay.
It's happened before, there's been situations where I've stepped into larger roles and I'm like, can I do this? And I always had to talk myself and give myself a write down reasons as to why or how I'm good enough, qualified, smart enough, all of those things in order to take on those roles. And I wanted to stop doing that to myself because it's not what I advise others to do, to sink into themselves and talk self-talk themselves out of things that are actually good for them. So it's happening right now. I'm in a major transition in my life and I'm the most adult I've ever been in my life.
Yes, own it.
And more wise than I've ever been in my life. And so this time around, it's less about the day-to-day 9 to 5, but also my entrepreneurial pursuits and ways that I can invest in my family and grow generational wealth and do all of those things that my old younger self would have been like, I can't do that, or I don't know how to do that. And I've really come to just learn that people just jump in and they figure it out.
Absolutely.
And if millions of people on the planet can start their own businesses and make things happen, well, why can't I?
Absolutely.
I've run businesses.
Absolutely, you have.
So why can't I do it for myself?
Let's just get into the stats of it all, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that Black women are starting the most businesses right now. We're the biggest segment of small businesses that are being created. And that's whether we are finally owning our agency like you and stepping out and doing our own thing, or we're finding ourselves in environments that weren't necessarily created for us, letting us be our best and letting us thrive. So we're going to go, where our talents are appreciated. So I love that. We're both in a transition moment, friend.
Yeah.
I think that this was meant to be, because I too am, after 17 years in advertising, spreading my wings, doing my own thing, fully able to have the conversations that I've been wanting to have about my lived experience in advertising. But what I found is also many, many others' lived experience as Black women in this industry that started off in very much a Mad Men type of way. Right.
Talk about it.
This transition point. And I think also with just the current, not to get into politics, but just the current state of the state of all things, right?
Yes.
Not just politics, but all things included.
Yeah.
We're really just charging forth and just being very definitive on what's good for me, whether it's the soft life, whether it's navigating to entrepreneurship, whether it's leaving the toxic work environment, whatever that is. I think a lot of people are in transition. So I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah.
And just thanks for being open and sharing that that's where we are.
I think when we talk about her agency, my own personal agency,
yes, ma'am,
it's about life strategy. And sometimes I think that we're busy reacting to what's happening around us.
Say that.
Things that we cannot control. We cannot control the political environment around us outside of our votes, right? And so when it comes to our lives, our day-to-day, that's where we have control.
Absolutely.
So while we're planning strategies for our clients and these big brands, for everybody else, why can't we sit down and do that for ourselves? And so I just had this aha moment. And I was like, girl, what's your strategy?
Yes.
You know? And I just mapped it out one day. And it's almost like going to therapy and manifesting.
Yes.
Therapy and manifesting. When I tell you things are just knocking down like, you know, it's amazing what doing that for yourself, journaling, strategizing, and all of that really does for oneself. It was like very pivotal. It's very pivotal for me in terms of figuring out what I want to do and taking my own agency for myself.
That's beautiful. So you are a DEI and an HR rock star. So let's just talk about the current state of the state.
Okay.
Some will say it's in shambles. But I would love to hear your perspective on all things diversity, equity, inclusion, and just, we know that, with the murder of George Floyd, a lot of people had a call to action. We had all the performative things from the Black Squares to the, we're going to raise and set aside and create space for all these people. And all that's been rolled back. Then you add on top of that the layer of, again, the political and economic environment. What's good, sis? Like, what is the state of DEI in your perspective?
Yeah, I think that the state of DEI is definitely under attack, and it's under attack at the highest levels. However, I don't see it as a sign for me and for others that are committed to this work to give up. And so what do I mean by that?
Okay.
So there aren't a lot of jobs listed as DE&I, but that doesn't mean you stop doing the work.
Okay.
We all have our own unique set of skills, knowledge, and abilities, and we can rope that DE&I into anything we do. It's about the core values that we have and we take with us. It's about the circles that we run in with our networks. It's about the decisions that we make every day. That's how you keep that going, because people can like tear down programs or say they're not going to have a DE&I team or a DE&I department. So that means you're supposed to stop doing the work.
Right, you just stop, right.
Yeah, no, because that's what people want you to think.
Absolutely.
People want you to think that if they cut these programs or no longer offer these jobs that were really just thrown out as, like you said, a performative thing to do.
Right.
Whereas before I even became a chief diversity officer, I've been doing it for 16, 17 years as an HR executive.
Yeah.
I see it as a very important discipline and a very important part of what I do, whether it's leadership development, roping that into diversity, and also mentoring and advising leaders to always show up for others, not just yourself.
Absolutely.
So you don't, even though it's under attack right now, that doesn't mean that it hasn't existed prior to 2020 and it's gonna keep on going. That's what it's called today. As we were talking about before, it could be called something else in the future. Could be not. But that doesn't mean that we stop advocating, that we stop doing the work in order to strengthen culture and continue to do what we're going to do anyway, because we're culture movers and shakers. So that isn't going to stop that.
And I love
happening.
What you said there. It's like we might not hold the title of Chief Diversity Officer or Head of Culture and Community or whatever the things are, but we still have a role and responsibility to do work that impacts the outcomes of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging, and on all the other words that we put in there, because at the end of the day, it's just how we create environments for people to thrive. And if you're truly focused on creating that type of environment, the DEI work comes naturally. And so it shouldn't be something that should just be turned off with the light switch if it goes away as a role. Yeah,
what we're talking about is people really changing the narrative of something that was really meant to help people, marginalized communities, people of color, women, disabled people, all of the injustices that were going on, and they're still going on in the areas of police brutality and all of those things. That's weaponizing words against something that was meant to be something that was very impactful.
Yeah.
But I don't need that word associated with me to do the work.
Say that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's
sure.
That's definitely a gem. And I think that that's going to go a long way to help people change their perspective of kind of the fear that's in the air of people who are in those roles or people who had initially aspired to be in those types of roles. That should create a little bit of assurance that knowing that they can move differently and still do the work. That's good. So what do you think that brands and companies should do when it comes to agencies saying and calling them and holding them accountable and saying, yes, you need that. Yes, you need to still continue to tap into us to help you do this work. What should brands and companies' approach be now? Should they double down? What's the prescription for the brands as it pertains?
I think they absolutely should double down, not be fearful. There are still people out here that are supporting this work and how important it is. And I think it's a fallacy or just a flat out lie when people say that diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility doesn't equal dollars. We have plenty of case studies. Our girl Rihanna Fenty. Okay.
Right.
$1 billion business, right? And what she did influenced Victoria's Secret to change the way they do business. Facts. It's a fact. That's one example. I'm not going to waste I'm not going to waste time on your podcast with doing so many others.
Yeah.
But one of many, many examples of how and why it matters and how it does actually mean or equal success for a brand. So when you shut out your main consumers, what are you doing? You might as well just close your books and cut your losses. So despite the fact of what's going on in the political world, when we're looking at business and who the consumers are, like not losing sight of that and leaning in and doubling down is going to be really, really important. And culture, the people that are creating these cultural artifacts every day that are leaning into these brands that are making stuff hot, they're more likely to uplift a brand or showcase a brand or creators create around a brand that are aligned with their own personal values or that sees who they are and celebrates who they are.
Absolutely. So that's good insight for what brands should do. What do you think agencies should do? Are you a Black girl in advertising? If so, we've created the most amazing space just for you. If you are ready to thrive and not just survive in this male-dominated space, if you want to lock arms, build community and culture with others that look like you, join her agency, The Collective, a place where we're having real conversations, doing the work, building our brands, taking up space, and owning our agency. See you there.
I have a lot of feelings about this. And I think that agencies are doing what they can, right? But they can do more in a sense that I feel that there are systematic things in place from a financial standpoint. Because we as marketers, we get in these rooms and these spaces, these conferences, and we're like in this echo chamber with each other. And we're talking amongst ourselves, saying the same things all the time. And when the decision makers are in the room, then people shy up and they don't want to say the hard things. The hard things around marketing, multicultural marketing, the budgets that it takes to create these epic, beautiful ideas that all these creatives are coming up with. Whether you're at an agency or in-house at a brand, everybody's dealing with it, right? And so I think that there has to be an honest conversation about the financial systems that are in place. The systemic ways in which we budget around advertising and the creatives that we produce, right? In terms of the multicultural market getting a certain amount of the budget versus the general market. But there are very smart CEOs and CMOs at these big brands that know that the multicultural market is, in fact, the general market.
Absolutely.
You look at the demographics of this country and globally.
All the data.
All the data is there. However, I don't feel as though we're inviting all the right decision makers into these rooms.
Okay, well, let's talk about
into these conversations.
Yes, who's missing?
Finance is missing from this. The CFOs. Like, get them out of their spreadsheets and into these conversations so they understand in addition to what's impacting these numbers, why these numbers, what the story is behind the numbers, the qualitative with the quantitative.
That's such a good insight.
Yeah, because I've been in many of these rooms. I consider myself an adolescent in advertising because I also had another career in tech.
Okay.
Right. But I'm listening to all these words, and sometimes we're in these conferences and these big CEOs are in the building and nobody's asking for the money for the multicultural marketing endeavors.
That's so good.
Because they don't want to ruffle any feathers. Yeah. They don't want to break or cut a hole in the bag that they've already just worked so hard to pitch and win.
So busy holding on over here that they're missing opportunity.
They're missing out on the big story, the big opportunity. The big opportunity is let's redefine the way in which we approach the funding for these markets. And I think there's an opportunity there to uncrack or unlock like huge opportunities.
That's so good.
Yeah.
The way you speak about it, it's just so fluid. What is the term that you call yourself? Share with the people.
Oh, I call myself a people and culture evangelist.
Tell me more. Explain to that what that means, the definition of that, and how that empowers you and fuels how you move in this work that we do.
Well, that's been my moniker since I was like a very young mid-level HR employee. I started like doing things around the office and just things that just really impacted workplace culture. And then I'm also a lover of life. My name means life in Swahili.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so culture and anthropology and all these things are really important to me. So when I say I'm a people and culture evangelist, I'm literally out here. Think about like an evangelist in the religious sense.
Like a little, yes.
I'm really want to and wish and just thrive on being out here talking to people about ways to make life better, from the way we work together at work to the work we do out in our communities. Evangelizing that is very, very important to me. So I've never lost that tagline for myself. In fact, I wanted to make it more of a reality and double down into just continue evangelizing the greater good for our communities.
That's so profound. That's so profound. So shout out to you for patting yourself on the back that you've been doing this work, right?
Yeah.
You're true to this, not new.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Absolutely.
And you had a previous life in tech, which is interesting. What is the intersectionality between tech and multicultural, in your opinion, as we see it right now?
I think that we're on the cusp of an opportunity to really innovate. And there are some amazing women that are working in AI that are innovating new tools, new chats like Black GPT, and
that's dope.
all of those, and Dr. Joy, and there's so many other women out there that are innovating, because when we're looking at these tools and seeing that they are not wholly inclusive because they are coded by predominantly males, so there's a need for the AI tools to create, like, for instance, when we're creating, whether it be copy or generative AI art, you may notice like hands aren't all right, or arms, or if you're creating Black people, like we all have different skin colors and different textures of hair.
Say that because it took me about, I think, 3 days to get braids. I was doing a book for my son and his likeness, and he's got long hair in the middle of his back. And it took me like legit 3 days to get a Black boy with braids. The AI just could not figure that out. So to your point about who's creating the platforms that we're using, that is a big focus that we just need to have. So when you talk about Black Chat GPT and things like that, it's really critical that we build the spaces. Are you loving just what you're seeing?
I am. I'm loving that people are taking their agency and creating and innovating and adding to the conversation, because if we take the tools as they are at face values, they definitely cannot replace creatives, in my opinion, as they are now.
Right.
But just I tried to create an invite of a beach party where people are playing dominoes, and it was all men at the domino table, as if women don't know how to throw bones.
Like what's going on?
What's going on, right? Yeah. So, or whether it's creating art around non-binary people or persons with disabilities, all of those things. So tech at the intersection of diversity, there is a huge opportunity there for sure.
Yeah. And I just love how we're owning it and we're creating the things and we're dabbling in it. My prompt game is strong. Like,
oh yes,
I have been in the weeds, and it was just funny that I found myself when I was at my last agency role in an environment where my clients were like, no, it was finance. And they were very strict on like, no, we're not touching any generative AI. Like, just don't do it. We could go do it for other brands, consumer brands, retail fashion brands, but this FinServe was just like, absolutely not. So owning my agency, right? I went out and I dabbled in it on my own, and I was creating and learning. And so now I'm in a place where I can teach and train others in the space who are, whether they're curious or they want to leverage it. But I just think that it's so critical that we're at a moment in time where the playing field is even. We can all start to learn about tech and how to utilize these tools while they're being built, while they're evolving, while the evolution is happening. So I just love that you see such an opportunity. I love that the confidence in which you spoke about the ways that, no, it can't necessarily replace everything that we're doing from a creative perspective, but we need to be very mindful and demure about how we approach using the tools. And that's so dope. I love to hear your perspective on that. That's
absolutely.
So good. Let's talk about some key components of creating real connections, because when we talk about being at cultural agencies and we talk about the multicultural consumer or the underrepresented consumer, if you want to position it that way, it's really just about creating connections and telling those stories that resonate with us. So where do you see the future of advertising going as far as brands being able to tap into telling stories and representing the people that they're looking to serve?
Yeah, I think that it's smart business to continue to tap into culture. I think the brands that get it are going to get it. There's a whole new generation of marketers that are coming up through all the different programs that are available, whether it be MAIP or Ad Color Futures, all the lovely programs that our brothers and sisters are doing out there. And there is a responsibility. And I think that generation are holding these brands accountable. They are working at these brands. They're telling a very unique and authentic story. And I think that the proof is in the numbers that people gear towards or move towards brands that they feel really connect with them authentically, and without that they're at a loss. So the future, when you ask me about the future is in the future generations.
Right.
I think that the generations that are coming up along beside us and after us are gonna be the ones creating these unique stories. And the way they're already doing it on social media and creators, whether it's just UGC content or influencer marketing, all of these things are already happening. And people tend to gravitate toward brands where it's proven, right? And people connect with creators that are making things that because they trust them. They trust who they are.
Trust is huge.
Trust their brand.
Right.
And so like, hey, I may go out and trust that. So I personally believe that the future comes within the new generations as we have a generational shift in the workplace, and as people are coming up and bringing each other along, those stories are going to continue to be told. They're being done in a very independent way now as we speak.
Yes.
So we no longer have we have the luxury now of being able to create our stories on our own thanks to technology. We don't have to wait for
that's an excellent way to put it. It is a luxury. It is a luxury. And that's what that double clicks on the point of just taking it upon ourselves to learn it, whether we're in an environment that champions that or not. I'd love to hear your perspective on culture agencies, right? Because to one degree, there's a bunch of them popping up because we find often that the general market agencies either don't see value in it or don't do a good job at it. But then do you think if we have the shift of general market agencies tapping in better to multicultural marketing, that there's the need for the cultural agencies? Where do you see the next maybe 5-7 years of the state of the cultural agency?
If I had my way, all agencies would be culture agencies rather than
more.
just general market agencies. That's, to me, that's just another way to keep everything separate. That's that systematic thing that I was talking about. Every agency should be a culture agency. Now, whether or not they will, that remains to be seen.
Right.
But I think that, once again, as this next generation are coming up, in terms of how a lot of the strategists are working nowadays, like if you're not taking that culture element into the consideration, you're missing a big picture when you're talking about, and I'm no big strategy person. I'm a people strategist, but I can see what's going on, right? And what is happening is, like, if we keep everything general market and keep multicultural marketing separate and culture agencies separate, it is a very particular, specific skill set.
For sure.
I will give you that. However, I also think that we have to break down the walls of keeping it this very particular skill set.
Right.
Whether you're in the universities here or anywhere in the country, that should be added into the curriculum, because it's just what the world is today.
The way of the world.
It's very archaic to think through the lens of marketing, advertising through one general lens of the general market. In my opinion, and many other marketers' opinion, multicultural is the general market.
Yeah,
so you're living in the past.
Yeah.
You're living in the past if you're like, oh, we're general market and that's it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are afraid of what they don't know.
Ooh.
They're afraid to speak on something that they feel they're not qualified to speak on as it relates to culture.
Yes, that's good.
But when you reshape and rethink about how culture is defined, there's so many different layers to it that we all uniquely have something to add. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a man or a non-binary person, or someone from the LGBTQ plus community, everyone has something to add to the conversation.
Yeah.
Why do we have to be separated?
Right.
That's like segregation in marketing. It just doesn't make sense.
And it's lazy and it's boring.
Yeah.
There's just so many problems with that approach that fundamentally it's just like, why are we still needing to have these conversations with how people approach that work?
It's an old structure.
It is.
And I think that agencies really have to break out of and rethink how they approach the work, how they approach their work with the clients from a monetary and budgetary standpoint. I think that's where the opportunity is. That's why I really feel like I make friends with finance.
Right.
Bring them into the conversation.
That's so good.
Along with the strategist, because it is a big part of the overarching business strategy that leads to productivity and consumption.
Absolutely, it is. I love this conversation. I'm interested to know what's next for you. What's coming down the pike? What are you excited about? Whether it's just on a personal level, the industry, what's bringing you joy these days?
I am really enjoying me time.
Yes.
In terms of getting to know who I am now at this ripe age. I'm enjoying writing. I'm enjoying coloring.
Coloring is very therapeutic.
I'm
damn near cathartic.
I am coloring with my daughter, and I am just like recapturing my youthful self, my teenage self, but also I'm this wise woman that's living through things.
Shout out for the sages.
I'm just enjoying me. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about my family business and growing and developing my daughter, who is an amazing, talented nail artist. And I'm excited about so many things. I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had, like working at Cashmere. Those are my folks. That's my squad. They're my gang for real, day ones. And the fact that like where I started in this industry 7-8 years ago, coming in alone and leaving with this community. I shouldn't say leaving, but just like having a greater sense of professional community and friends, and just connectivity, I gotta say this, if I don't say anything else before I leave, is that your network is almost like your net worth.
Absolutely. It is.
In terms of opportunities, building bridges, being a conduit to opportunities for others, making relationships, but in fact keeping them and making them real and honest, because that's how we grow and we build generational wealth. We come together and do things, whether you're mentoring or you're the one that, or you're the mentee, and then you grow and then you bring somebody else along with you. That's so super important. I don't think I would feel as high and elated as I feel walking into this next stage of my life without a really strong set of community that have really uplifted me and supported me and protected me like none other.
Necessary. And it just with like all the changes that are happening in the world, community is more important than ever.
For sure. Like
that's really why I created this space and have the cohort and, pouring back into the girlies. I did my time, I did my 17 years in advertising. I took, I thrived and I survived. I did a little bit more surviving than thriving, but, community is very necessary. But I want to double click on what you said about taking the connections with you. I tell everybody there's 3 things you should really take away from every job. It's the skills, it's the portfolio to show your proof of the work, and then it's the connections.
For sure.
So shout out to you for leaning into that, building and cultivating that for yourself, because it is really about who we know that takes us through to the next
And
stages.
I want to be that for others.
Absolutely.
For sure. Like I thrive on just being able to connect people. It's why I got into doing what I do. I wanted to be able to help people do work that supports their families and their lives and their best interests. And I really just enjoy it. That's why I'm an evangelist.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Thank you for shining your light and being an evangelist. So just real quick, 3 top takeaways. What are the 3 main gems that we talked about in this conversation today for the ad girlies out there that they need to take with them to own their agency?
Write your own story. Build community. And show up. Like, the proof is in the pudding of what you do. And if you haven't done it yet, you will. You will. Give yourself the opportunity and time and show and prove, and you can do it. You got this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me at her agency.
Thanks, Brandy.
Aisha. Thank you.